Dude, this was awesome. I didn't have to say anything. I was ready to go. That is a good sign. Or if you're really tired, you're not going to fall asleep. So we'll find out in a few minutes. Hey, retreat is this weekend. We're going to go to hospital, in case you didn't know. Here's some information. We're going to leave at 6 in the designated parking lot of the Parker, which is the one across from Davis on campus. So it's like University, Davis, there's parking lot in the middle. That's where the bus will be. So our bus, because I do not have a CDL, it's 15 people. We currently have 20 of you that have responded. And I think one person said they couldn't go, so 90. So I will need one student to drive with preferably a vehicle that can fit a few people comfortably. So if you would like to drive, come talk to me after. We also might, I'll get with you, we might have 1 or 2 people that might need to leave just a little bit later. So I'll talk to you about it if you're willing to drive and maybe lift. So just come talk to me if you're able to. Fill out the Google form if you haven't. If you're planning to go, fill out the Google form. You can Venmo me, you can bring me cash, you can bring Parker cash, just whatever one works easiest for you. So what we'll be doing is, you pretty much just wear like normal person clothes. Like I'm gonna wear like shorts and a t-shirt like, the whole time. So except for on Sunday morning, we'll go to Gwinnett Church of Christ, which I believe in Decatur. Is that right, Sharon? Decatur? Or like Hartselle or something?
Yeah, something like that.
So somewhere in that general area. I definitely mapped it out. I know what I'm talking about. But anyways, we're going to Gwinnett Church of Christ, and so we're like what you would wear on a Sunday morning. But other than that, then we're not doing anything nice. So there is the dress code, I believe, is like basically the same as Faulkner's, like whatever Faulkner's dress code is, but like actually the dress code though, like not like a Faulkner dress code that's not actually like enforced. So so please like wear dress code. George our credit card from the knee, I believe. There's a place to swim. So dress code applies. We have it from 9 to midnight every night. And so if you want to go swim, like night swim in this pavilion, then we'll be able to swim there from 9 to midnight. But yeah, so dress code still applies at the pool, so just be mindful of that if you want to go to swim, dark shirts, whatnot, whatever. If you have any questions about what would or would not be appropriate, you can talk to me or talk to one of the adults in the room, or talk to Billy or Shelby. Anyways, but yeah, so be mindful of that. We'll leave at 6 on Friday. Yes.
Sorry, I did not mean to stop you.
No, so all right, so there's a lot of things that I'm learning. First retreat here. One of the things is I should ask you today. I'm pretty certain you don't have to bring that. However, I will email tomorrow. And then if you do, I will put it on the Instagram story. And you can text me tomorrow if I have something to ask. So y'all can hold me accountable on that one. But I will email tomorrow and figure that one out. I'm almost certain that you don't have to. Okay, thank you for asking that question. Okay, I'm making a list of things that I need to do better on the next retreat, and I'm going to put that on there. I've already emailed this like 6 questions, so she's going to hate me. Sure. All right. Anyways, anything else?
Does that include like house showers and stuff?
I'm pretty certain I'll be there as well. But I can ask. Just make positive. So that isn't counted as bedding.
Didn't you say that vacuum list?
Yes. Yeah, I have a vacuum list. No, yes, I have a vacuum list, but I think it was like,
It's not enough.
yeah, I don't have vacuum stuff. Thanks, man. There's something you learn here. I'm learning more about it. Alright. Okay, so yeah, so this is okay, there's a typo on this. You can thank Sam more because there's a typo. Anyways, before we get started, so I put some new things on the boards back there. Some new things to like something new to study. A different way you can serve. They're ramping up the Last Leaders program for Dalreda, and they're wanting mentors and such for like lessons and if you're really whatever you're able to do. And so if you're interested in kind of mentoring some of the younger people here at Dalreda through that, then get with Billy or John Kappelman, and you can help them that way. and some new things to pray about, and we'll pray about it here in just a moment. John Kackelman and Terry Baker, Mr. David's father, are in Ukraine right now, and Gift leaves tomorrow at 1 for Ukraine. So we can be praying about that. And then also, Jeremy came up to me before class and told me that he has a connection. There's a guy named Keith Sargent who he does mission work in Uganda, and he said that there was recently a mudslide in Uganda, and there's a lot of deaths that happened because of it, and some specific stories that were just really tragic. And so we can be praying about that as well. So just kind of maybe as you're leaving the room each Wednesday or Sunday, just kind of maybe take a peek at those boards and see if there's anything new, some ways that you can serve, or some new things you can pray about, or whatever, just as you walk out. Along those lines, is there anything else that we need to pray about before we begin?
Tomorrow I'm saying it was like education day.
Yeah.
So, like,
Cool. Okay. All right. So the big deal. All right. We'll remember that.
My sister's had a lot of complications during her pregnancy, and so she's been in and out of the hospital quite a bit after the so just pray for her health and her good health.
Okay.
One of the coaches that I coach with, his wife has cancer. He just had surgery, so.
Okay.
Maybe Lucy's mom had surgery today, and it went well, but just prayer for recovery
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I had my cardiologist appointment, and they did some tests, and I'm on drugs right now. It's just whether it be some different.
Very well. How long do you have for the monitor?
I'm on a 48-hour one, and then depending on how this one, depending on what they get from this one, I'll either be put on a long-term one, or they'll take out medication, or they'll have me come in and
All right. Okay, let's pray. Father, Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for this avenue of prayer that we have. We're able to just come before your throne and know that you are listening to us, and we're able to make some pleas before you, to praise you for being the God that you are, and for answering our prayers. Lord, we're mindful that you answered our prayer of Haley's mom's surgery going well, and we're thankful for that. And we ask that you be with her as she's recovering with the surgery she had. Lord, there's several amongst us who have things in their minds, things that they're going through, whether it be with their own health or the people around them. Lord, we are mindful of Nathan's coach's wife and her cancer and the surgery that she's just had. So we ask that you be with them, be with Philip's sister and her pregnancy, and be with her health and the baby's health as well. And really with the whole family if they're worried about it, and comfort them and have your healing hand over that. Lord, we ask that you be with the next couple of days, that Jade will get some answers as she wears this monitor, and that your hand be over that as well. Father, we ask that you be with Hannah and the test that she has tomorrow. It can be stressful and worrisome, but it can also be such a good thing as well. And so we ask that you just be with her in that, help her to pass, and to not become too worried or stressed over it all. Lord, we have so many things on our minds and our hearts, and we ask that you be with them all, and let your healing hand be in all the situations in our lives that are difficult and that need you. We love you, and it's in your Son's name that we pray. Amen. Okay, today we're going to talk about love does not boast, and it is not arrogant. They're very close to the same, so we're going to talk about both of these today in one class. Here's some definitions for us. So, to boast, it would be like a statement that expresses excessive pride in oneself. To praise oneself extravagantly in speech, or to speak of oneself with excessive pride. Another definition would be to speak too proudly or happily about what you have done or what you own. The word itself in 1 Corinthians 13, it means to boast oneself, a self-display, employing rhetorical embellishments in extolling one's self excessively. So basically, it's bragging a lot. You are really lifting yourself up, putting yourself on a pedestal, playing yourself to everybody. Now, the other word is arrogant. To be arrogant is exaggerating or disposed to or you are disposed to exaggerate one's own worth or importance, often by an overbearing manner. And you can be unpleasantly proud and behaving as if you are more important than or know more than other people. The word itself means to become puffed up, conceited, or put on airs. So, when you think of people or someone who is arrogant, what are some characteristics that come to mind of that person? What do you mean? Like
Proud of themselves.
Okay. Yeah, so they're just proud. They fit the definition really well. They're very proud of everything they have and whatnot. What else? Egotistical. So they just think a lot of themselves and think that they're very important and that the world kind of revolves around them. Okay, what else? Yeah, so like you just kind of think you're the best. What else? Someone who's arrogant. How do they interact with other people? How do they think about themselves? When you have a conversation with someone who's arrogant, what are maybe some things you may notice?
I think they're always right.
Okay, so they think they're always right. They're pretty fixed on their mindset. It's hard to convince them of anything or really disagree with them at all because they're going to always be like think of what they want, and you're not going to change that. So yeah, that's a characteristic. What else? Okay, so you can kind of tell like when they interact with their parents if they're going to be arrogant or not. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it kind of may go back to how they're raised. Yeah. Well,
I'm one of the first ones to admit I struggle with this, but speak without thinking a lot of times. Without just thinking before, like in any situation, just go ahead and just say whatever comes to mind.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it can sometimes show like you're not maybe really caring about how it's taken or how the other person, what they may think about it if you're quick to speak. Okay. Yeah, pretty self-obsessed. Like it seems like every conversation you have, all of the whatever you say, it somehow will lead back to something that happened to them, or something about them, or that relates to them in some way. Conversation leads back to them. What else?
Looking down on people because they're struggling.
Yeah, so they're looking down on people, thinking that basically just kind of using people as step stools. A lot of times people that are arrogant may get people that are equal or lesser to them and kind of try to use them to elevate their own social status, like kind of step on them as stairs, right? And then they really only see value in people that will help them elevate and like help them gain in some way. And so yeah, that could be the case. There's a lot of different descriptions we could probably give. One of them is that they boast, and it was kind of brought up, like they feel the need to kind of praise themselves because of some insecurity. And one who is arrogant, they boast, like we'll discuss that relationship a bit more later tonight, but just know that one who is arrogant also boasts. So they're not synonymous, but one is a product of the other oftentimes. They tend to talk over others. So like if you're in a conversation with someone who is arrogant, or maybe in a group with one person who's arrogant, then they might be like the loudest one. Their words kind of seem more important, at least to them, and so they'll cut you off and they won't really let you talk. They'll be louder. They'll have the most to say sometimes. They're disagreeable. Some people who are arrogant are disagreeable. They feel the need to challenge everything that is said or done, almost to like an excessive degree, because it makes them feel more right. People who are arrogant, they lack empathy. They can't share in or understand someone else's feelings, really. They don't feel like compassion or understanding for others, and it causes them to look over the little people, kind of like what you talked about, and then really only care about those who they find value in. And I'm sure a lot of you might be thinking of someone right now, and I'm definitely not going to ask you to say who it is. But some of you might have someone in mind that's like, oh, this person kind of fits a lot of those characteristics. Like they might be pretty arrogant. And if someone fits most or all of these characteristics or descriptions, then the word loving is probably not one that you would use to describe this person as well. Like you would probably not use all of these descriptions or most of these descriptions and say, but this person is also very loving. Because they don't go together at all, and love can't be arrogant. True love is selfless. And it is a love for self in a healthy way. It's a love for others in the same way. We kind of see that idea in Matthew 22, verse 39, with love your neighbor as yourself. Like, you're called to love yourself, and it's not wrong to be confident and to love yourself. We're also called to love each other in that same way. So, the question, does God's love portray arrogance? And of course, just like last week, the obvious answer is no, and we'll discuss why. But it is important to point out some distinct differences when comparing the love that God shows and the love that we are called to show, especially using in this way because God is God. And so when we look at the definition of arrogance or boasting, we might look at some of those and say, we could look at some of them and potentially say, maybe God, he lifts himself off. Like, God thinks that he's better than everyone else. And the fact is that he is. Like, he can praise himself or call others to praise him because he is worthy of all praise. He can put himself on a pedestal to be praised because he is our creator and we are created to praise him. We are created to lift him up above ourselves. However, this is not God boasting. This is not God being arrogant. By nature, God is truly greater than us in every way as our creator. And he deserves our praise. And so this is more so talking about when we, in our interactions with each other, when we're given those definitions of boasting and arrogance, we are talking about like people who are on the same playing field here, which is all of us, because none of us are God. I feel like that is a concept we now grasp. But even knowing this, like even God knowing that he is the creator, he is God, he still ensures that his love to us shows the exact opposite of what we consider to be arrogant or boastful. One of the descriptions I was given was people that are arrogant will talk over others, but God doesn't. He doesn't talk over others. In fact, he listens to his people. What are some times when God chose to listen rather than talk over his people, knowing that his words actually were more important? What are some times that God chose to listen that you can think of? Shame.
When he was telling people that they didn't need a king and they wanted to follow so allow them to have a king in their lives.
Right. So when they said like we want to be like these Canaanite nations and have a king that will rule us, and Samuel thought that it was like kind of a dig against him, and I was like, no, they just rejected me and let them have a king. Okay, well,
When Abraham tried to convince God to spare Sodom and Gomorrah.
yeah. So God listened to Abraham, and in fact, Abraham like changed his mind multiple times by saying, well, what if you just wait this long? So God granted him that long. And God listened to Abraham. What else?
I mean, that is the same time when I was like, don't wait out and wait for when the Israelites and then going back and forth and front of your front and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like advocating someone for the Israelites and going out okay, like don't do anything yet.
Yeah, so there's that one specific time, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, in Exodus 32, where Moses goes before God and asks God to spare them, and he kind of convinces him, gives him argument as to why. But God listened to the Israelites. Often it says God heard the Israelites cry or grumble or complain or whatever. But God listened. They listened to Moses. You can look and go ahead.
Anytime that all throughout Judges, when the Israelites were oppressed, and because they were following the words of God, and they realized they were being oppressed, they were like, back.
Yeah. Yes. It blows my mind every time when you see how wicked the Israelites will be or are at this point in the Bible, especially in Judges, and then they're punished for it. They're oppressed by some group of people or some nation, and they cry out to God, and God hears them, and He delivers them by raising up a judge. God listens in those times. There's a lot of examples that we could bring up. One that I always think of Habakkuk, in case you haven't noticed. The whole book of Habakkuk is Habakkuk and God going back and forth and talking. And Habakkuk just doesn't understand, and he's upset in the whole book because the Babylonians are about to come in and take over his land, his home, and So Habakkuk is upset over this, and he's upset over this, and he just never understands. And he kind of accuses God of not really watching and not paying attention, and not showing them love to those who truly love them and are trying to live according to God's will. And then each time God will allow Habakkuk to finish talking, and then at some point God responds. And he will respond in a just way. And then it goes back and forth multiple times until the end of the book. Habakkuk realizes, oh, God is God, and he's going to do what he wants to do. And that he is just in that. But God listens to Habakkuk. God listens to Job through the whole book. He listens to Job, and then you get to the end, and he's like, all right, I've had enough. Here's what it's going to be. And talks to Job to that. But he listened to this whole conversation with Job and his friends. I think about Jesus. Like, anytime the Pharisees would speak, Jesus would let them speak and then reply with a question or with something that would, most of the time end up like stumping them or something. But Jesus would let them speak. God listens. Can someone read for me Psalm 18, verses 1 through 6 on the screen?
I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress, and my deliverer. My God, my rock, in whom I take refuge. My shield and the horn of my salvation. My stronghold, I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. And I am safe from my enemies. The cords of death encompass me, and the torrents of ungodliness terrified me. The cords of Sheol surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried to my God for help. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cries for help before him came into his ears.
And then, Jay, can you read this verse for me?
The Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth.
So, within these past couple of verses, something that is glaring is that God listens. In this verse, we see, one, how he sees God. And the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. So, I really like the English in high school. There's my English teachers were usually my favorite teachers. And so one thing that I noticed, especially when I read like Psalm poetry, is when they use rhetorical devices. And this one they use what's called polysyntheton, which is just multiple conjunctions without, you can have commas or not commas, but they're just using multiple conjunctions like and to emphasize, like, I see God as my rock, and I see him as my fortress, and I see him as my deliverer. And so this is how he sees God. This person is a follower of God. And then at the end of the verse, you hear him say that the Lord hears his people when they come to him in prayer. Like, I came to you in distress and all these, and I was crying out for help. And in your temple, out of your temple, you heard me cry out for help. Then we get into this verse. What does the psalmist mean when he says that God is near?
He's always ready for you, and ready for him.
Yeah, he is in close proximity, like he is ready to hear you whenever you need him, whenever you cry out to him. God is listening. He hears our prayers, and he wants us to come to him. That's why he is near. He wants to hear us. We see him in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. It says to cast all of our anxieties on him. Like, he is wanting us to talk to him about whatever is happening in our lives. The second one is that God acts. One of the characteristics of someone who is arrogant is that they need to be right all the time. And that God does not need to be quote-unquote right. God listens to our pleas, he hears our petitions, and he can change his mind, act on what we pray about. And so what I mean by God is not right, or it doesn't matter if God is right. What I mean by that is that we're not in the position to judge like whether what God does is right or wrong. Like, anything that he decides to do will be in line with his nature, which is just and loving and merciful and full of grace. And so anything that God decides to do will not be outside of his nature. Therefore, it will be right. Whether we think it's good or right or not, it will be right. And so it's not for us to determine. But what I mean by that is that God is willing to hear us, what we just talked about, and then act upon what we want or what we need. And so there are multiple instances throughout the Bible where God appears to change his mind or act because of a prayer in some way. So in Genesis 6, when he decided, it says that he regretted or repented from making man because they were so bad. And in Jeremiah 26, and Amos chapter 7, verses 3 and 6, and all are times that say, in some way, either God saying or someone writing to say that God was said to have changed his mind in some way. In Exodus chapter 32, what you were just talking about, the Israelites make this golden calf as God is giving the law to Moses. And they just recently have seen Mount Sinai in the most intimidating and scary way that they have ever seen it. Really ever seen anything. Moses had consecrated the mountain. And God said to set this mountain apart. Do not let the Israelites come up to even touch this mountain. And then after 3 days, you can go down and talk to them and tell them kind of what's happening. So on this third day, this mountain is the most frightening thing that they have ever seen. And the Israelites like quaking in their boots here. And Moses goes down and talks to them for a second. And it's like, I'm going to go back up. And they say, that's fine, but you talk to us. Do not let God talk to us because we will die. Like, they are so scared of what they have just seen on this mountain. Then, Moses is being given the law, and they think, wow, Moses is taking forever, let's make a golden calf, because that makes sense. And so they make this golden calf. And God was so mad, he was so upset with the Israelites, that he wanted to destroy them all because of their unfaithfulness. And pretty much just start over. And he says, Moses, like, I'll make a great nation out of you. And like, we'll run this back, and we'll do it with Moses this time. And it says that Moses pleaded for the people with God so that all of the people weren't destroyed. And he really gives an argument. He is like, here, God, these are the reasons that you should not do this. And while God justly could have done it, he could have destroyed the people because of how angry they made him and how wrong they were and how unfaithful they were, and that would be just. He decided to show mercy because Moses went to him and said, hey, can you please not do that, and can you please do this instead? This was not, it's important to note, I think, this was not some uncontrollable burst of anger that God had where he was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to destroy them all. It was not something that was just some uncontrollable emotion. He changed his mind because of the plea from Moses. But like I said earlier, if he had not changed his mind, it still would have been just because they were wrong. They were unfaithful multiple times already. And so it would not have been unjust or outside of God's nature to do that. But he changed his mind because Moses asked him to. And God, apparently he thought it was a good idea. He agreed with Moses. He wanted to give Moses give the Israelites some slack, be patient with them, or whatever it may be. God changed his mind because Moses went to him. Someone read for me Mark chapter 11, verses 22 to 24, please.
And Jesus answered them, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours.
What do we learn in this verse about our prayers?
That we have faith that God will do it.
Yeah, we're called to have faith that God can act, will act in accordance with your requests. Like God can answer your prayer. There's no point in praying a prayer to God and asking him something if you don't think it can be done. If you don't think that it will happen in some form or some way, there's no point in asking if it won't get done. Christian, can you read verses 13 through 18 of James chapter 5?
Is anyone among you suffering? Then he must pray. Is anyone sure that he is to sing praises? Is anyone among you? He must call for the elders of the church, and they are in prayer over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offering faithful will restore the one who is sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sin, they will forgive him. Therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. The effective prayer of a righteous man can accomplish much. Elijah was a man with nature like ours. He prayed earnestly that it would not rain. And it did not rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. Then he prayed again. The sky poured rain and the earth produced its fruit.
It's fun against the water. Like, there's some water in that fruit. I'm like not joking, but anyways. So yes, so here in James lists multiple reasons to go in prayer. He says, like, is anybody suffering? You should pray about it. Is anybody cheerful? You should pray about it. You should sing praises. Is anyone sick? Then you should call the elders and they should pray about it. He lists these multiple things that can, like, scenarios of, is this happening? Pray. Is this happening? Pray. And then he closes this section with why you should go in prayer. Like, he's told you when to go in prayer. This is why. It says prayer is powerful. It says Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. He was a human, and he strove to please God and be God's people. And he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. He prayed that it wouldn't rain for 3.5 years, and that's what happened. Now, I'm not saying that God could totally decide, I don't want it to rain for 3.5 years, and then it not rain for 3.5 years. Like, obviously, this is within God's realm of capability because it happened. However, because Elijah asked for it, God granted it. Elijah believed that it could happen, that God was capable of it. He had a reason for it. He asked, and God did it. And then Elijah prayed for rain, and it rained because God allowed it to rain. And so God is hearing these prayers, and he's listening to the pleas of Elijah, the petition that he's making, and he's doing it. And God is acting. So, thinking along those lines, knowing what we know about God is listening and God can act, how does knowing that God considers our prayers and he can act, how does it affect how we pray? How should it affect how we pray? Okay. Do you want to elaborate?
I don't know what I'm thinking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, the thought stands. So we should be intentional. Okay, so we should be maybe not just uttering empty prayers, not just saying repetitive, empty things that really don't mean anything. It's what we always say, and then expect something to happen. I expect that to mean anything. Hey, there we go. There we go. We're on the same way. And knowing that God is hearing you, he is listening, and he is willing to act based on what you say, you should be intentional. You should be thinking about what you're saying. You are talking to the creator of the universe, who is listening to you, and he is near to you, and he is willing to act based on what you're saying. So you should be intentional. What else?
You should be confident.
Okay.
Yeah, knowing, when all of this is going on, you're like, you know what, it's going on, I know I have to do with God, and he has it, and he's in control, and that's all we can.
Absolutely. You should be confident going before God. And we'll talk about that a little bit again, a little bit later. But you should be confident in the fact that that God is near to you and that he will act based on what you have to say. And if this is the God that is, if the creator of the universe is the one that is near to you and listening to you and willing to act, then you should be confident when you go in prayer. What else?
You should be humble. Because you're presenting yourself before the throne.
Okay, yeah, so you should also be humble, knowing that, like, the God that you are going to, while he's there for you and he's willing to act, it's also God. And so there's certainly a place where you are and the place where he is, and that should be realized when you go before him.
Should be comforted knowing that he does actually listen.
Right, yeah, so it kind of goes along the same lines as being confident. It's just like, he's there, he's listening. Like, there's multiple verses that talk about God listening to you. Another one is that arrogant people don't feel empathy. Like they can't feel empathy really, but God doesn't lack in empathy. While God knows us because he created us, Jesus also lived so that he could understand, like, firsthand what we're going through on this earth. And we see God, for one, having emotion just like we have. Like earlier, we saw that God was angry. And while God controls his emotions, he controls his anger, when oftentimes we may not, God still experiences the emotion. The emotion in and of itself is not wrong. And so God, one, can understand how we're feeling because he has emotion as well, and he created us, emotional beings. But also, a little bit more on the idea that Jesus came to understand what it's like to be on earth. In Hebrews 4:14-16, it says, "Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." There at the beginning it says a great high priest. What was the purpose of the priests, of the high priests? What was their umbrella job here? Main thing. Okay, the religious leader.
The intermediary between man and God.
Yes, so they were like the intercessor. They go before God on behalf of the people. He was like an ambassador of God to the people and an ambassador to God of the people. So he represented both groups, kind of. And not only does God understand our emotions, but his son walked on the earth and was tempted as we are, and now acts as someone who goes to God on our behalf. And so the end of this verse says that we can go to God's throne with confidence because Jesus knows how we feel. He understands how difficult it is to live on the earth. He understands the temptations that we're going through, and it's not like he just kind of breezed through the earth and it was easy for him. He's like, y'all should be doing this easily. He understands it's difficult to live on earth, and he understands that temptations are difficult. He is the one that is going before the Father on our behalf. The end of that verse says that it's the throne of grace. And so it's kind of the idea that like when we need to go to God with a need, we can know that his throne is one of grace and mercy. Qualities that are the exact opposite of someone who is arrogant, one who is graceful and merciful. And then in chapter 7, verse 24 and 25 of Hebrews, we get the idea that Jesus' priesthood is permanent. He will always be the great high priest. And so because of that, we should always be confident when we go to God, because Jesus will always be our intercessor. He will never switch up like other priests would at the time. He would never, like some priests would die, and you would have a new high priest come in. Jesus is eternal. He is always going to be our intercessor. And so we should always be confident in going before God. Finally, God lifts. One of the characteristics of someone who is arrogant is that you put other people down. But God doesn't put others down. Instead, he lifts up his people. Those who are arrogant are constantly self-seeking in the sense that they're always looking for opportunities to elevate their own social status. They will sometimes use those that are equal to them or less than, kind of to gain that. And then push others lower so they can appear to be higher. But God has no need of a higher status. He is as powerful and mighty as one can be on a platform of his own. And despite knowing this, he still lifts up his own creation. When thinking about some ways that God lifted up his people, it makes me think of in Genesis 1, 28 through 30, when man was created, God gave dominion over the earth. God gave man dominion over the earth. God shares this responsibility with mankind and says, I want you to have dominion over the earth. When you read the whole book of Leviticus, it's just a bunch of laws and ritual laws and rules. And these are all things that allow his people to be closer to him. Without these laws, without this ritual purity that they could have, they would not be able to go into the temple. And the temple was where God's presence was represented. And God is so holy and so pure that he could not be in the presence of someone who was not ritually pure and ritually set apart. And so all of these laws were just so that his people could be closer to his presence, even though mankind was defiled by sin. This was just an avenue that allowed his people to be closer to him. I think of 1 John chapter 1, verse 3. That says that we can have fellowship with the Father and with Jesus Christ. That we can be in a relationship with our Creator, which is a way that he is, not that we are on the level of God, obviously, but God is lifting us up in the sense that he cares about us. He is humble enough as a God to want us to be with him. He wants us to love him. He wants us to be in his presence. But just right now, we can't, because we are on earth and we are defiled by sin, and he is the utmost of holy. So, that was a bit of a rush. This last question before this. How can we show love without arrogance. Arrogance has no place in the church because the church is an environment where we all lift up each other. There is no room for self-seeking, impatience, minds that are not open to learning and growing. There's no room for self-obsession or boasting. And what do we have to even be arrogant about? Like blessings from God? Like possessions that are intended to be used for God's glory? Abilities that we have been given for the purpose of glorifying God? Like, where is there room for arrogance in our lives? What does it look like for us to love without arrogance, like daily? What would that look like? Yeah, so that's an easy answer: selflessness. Because the definition of arrogance is, caring about yourself and thinking yourself is great. And so, loving selflessly. What else? Okay, yeah. So taking time, basically sacrificing your own time to help someone else. Yes, so that would be loving without arrogance. Quickly, because this is the end, maybe practice being good listeners. Practice putting the words of others above your own words and thoughts, and this will separate you because there are not many people that are good listeners. Like, show that you care about someone so much that you're willing to block out distractions and spend your time listening to what someone else has to say. And then finally, build other people up. So I challenge you this week, look for an opportunity to build someone up in some way. Whether someone's having a rough go at it and you see the opportunity there, whether someone does something that deserves recognition and you think that that's awesome and you should point that out to them. Maybe it's just an encouraging message. Find a way sometime this week to build someone else up.